Hey, everybody, welcome. It is 7 o'clock, or just after 7 o'clock, because you know we never start on time. It's The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics. Also, I could easily say the most diverse conservative podcast in politics. I'm your host, Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for watching and listening whenever, wherever you may be doing so. We've got so much to talk about, and luckily we got our usual cast of characters, so we're going to be diving deep into today's issues. But again, we love you for joining us. If you are on Facebook, YouTube, make sure you leave us comments and questions. We'll bring those up throughout the show. Also, don't forget you can download the audio version of our podcast over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. We'll be continuing to build on that as well. So keep an ear out for more developments on that. And like we did last week, we've brought it back. We have Clubhouse live. That's right. We are broadcasting live on Clubhouse. If you want to join us, look for me, Jonny Torres, on Clubhouse. I've got a room up and running called The Yard Sign, so you can search by that as well. And if you are in our Clubhouse room, we will bring you into the show, and you can chime in on one of tonight's topics. So we will be watching to see who joins us on Clubhouse later on tonight. Okay, today's topics, let's go ahead and dive in because, as I said, there's plenty to talk about. First of all, Biden drowning in the polls. Gosh, I'm sure unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know why. Global infrastructure problems continue to plague not only the United States, but, just the global economy at large. We'll talk about why that's happening, where it's happening. Also, pilots crashing the vaccine mandates. Southwest Airlines has a huge PR disaster on their hands, all at the hands of federal government vaccine mandates. And so we'll pick that apart, including an exclusive interview that I'll tell you about coming up as well. And then our local Hillsborough Republican Party on probation. We'll get into a little of the weeds here locally on why that's happening and why it's really a good thing in the long run for everybody involved. So plenty to talk about. Let's go over to the big table and get this thing started. Joining me to my right, on the right, is Mr. Joe Wicker. How you doing, buddy? Oh, sorry. Hold on. That's me.
Mike.
That's on me.
No, Mike. I made it back in town. I was on an airplane this weekend as well.
I know.
No travel issues.
You took your son to his first collegiate football game?
First football game. It was
Right.
awesome.
Go Vols?
It was awesome. Go Vols.
Did
Go
they
Big
win?
Orange. They won. They won big.
Nice.
They won big
Oh,
over,
that's awesome.
over South Carolina, which is what you want to do.
Right.
I'm not saying that I avoided going to a game like UGA or something like that. But yes, no, I strategically chose that game because I wanted to get a win.
There you go.
Yeah, so it was good stuff. But
Well,
I
it was
made
like part flight, part road trip.
Took the red eye, so if anything would have happened, I wouldn't have made it back. Took the red eye. Yep.
All right. Well, luckily you weren't flying
awesome.
Southwest. So.
Nope, I was not.
All right. To his right, that would be the one and only Anibal, David Cabrera. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good.
You look good. You got a haircut?
I did. I got a
Yeah.
haircut. Got a new shirt, which is very odd for me.
Awesome.
This is not my
The other one
normal.
was starting to smell a bit.
I know. It is what it is.
Well, we're
No.
mandating haircuts now, right?
We are.
That's right.
Them?
I will say this.
you
Your
mandate it, it's
topics,
good,
the whole time I was like, phrasing.
Oh,
Phrasing.
I didn't think about that.
It's like pilots crash. No, pilots crash. You got,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Common.
Yeah, that's not.
I like putting a
Kosher,
little
right?
creativity into our topics. And like I said, we have an exclusive interview with a pilot that we will be posting to our Yard Sign properties. So keep an eye out for that. It is a quick but thorough conversation on what's happening with Southwest Airlines and how that's really going. This is the first domino to fall in at the beginning of a much larger problem that's going to affect global travel. And we'll talk about, again, why it's happening, why it started with Southwest, and we'll kind of move on from there with Captain Will Smith, not only of an experienced pilot of over 25 years, but also a published author, and also was working on developing a movie, too, which is pretty cool. So keep an eye out for that interview. More on that later. First, we're going to talk about Biden's crashing poll numbers. Again, inflation is up. Which I know Anibal loves talking about inflation, gas prices, food prices, and it's only going to get worse, especially if you've been watching what's happening out in California. Anibal, what are those poll numbers looking like, and what are we talking about here as we are starting to see the kickoff of the 2022 midterm elections?
Well, we kind of saw this 2 weeks ago with the outlier polls coming out. But Gallup, one of the biggest ones in the nation, actually came out with a new one over the weekend, and today they provided the data. It's showing a new low approval rating of 43% for the president at the moment. This is one of the lowest he's had right now. And really what's occurred is 45.1% of Americans approve of his performance, 47.9% disapprove. Only 39% of independents approve of his performance right now. And that has been dropping ever since the start of the summer. What's really seen is that the floor has dropped for independents supporting the president. And that was really what was holding up his presidency when it came to the numbers. Right now, he is underwater in every single topic when it comes to immigration, when it comes to his handling of the COVID, handling of the economy, handling of Afghanistan. And people were saying that his numbers were going to bounce back after the media stopped talking about Afghanistan. And it didn't. It's still continuing to drop.
Well, because you now also have the crisis at the border, which Kamala has been MIA, completely non-existent, even though supposedly she's in charge of the border. Now you've got this problem happening in California where there's an oil spill. And funny, nobody's talking about an oil spill in California. And you have cargo ships that are backed up that were already backed up because of COVID. Now they're backed up because of this oil spill. And again, shout out to Governor DeSantis, who is welcome them with open arms to all the amazing ports we have here in Florida. But we're looking at an economy that is slowly but surely coming to a screeching halt. And Pete Buttigieg is more concerned about calling Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples Day rather than addressing what's happening in California. And God knows where he is, too, because nobody seems to know where he is. He's not in California taking care of this problem, that's for sure.
I have an anecdotal poll that occurred over the weekend when I was at the University of Tennessee versus South Carolina football game.
A lot of let's go, Brandon.
Blank Joe Biden.
Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah, no, they didn't. They didn't do let's go, Brandon. They did. They did blank Joe Biden.
Right.
It didn't last long.
But that's the thing. Now you know. Now everybody knows when you say let's go, Brandon. Like everybody knows what you're talking about.
I had no idea what that was going on because they did it at a car racing, right?
It was at a
NASCAR race.
At a car.
It was NASCAR. It was NASCAR.
And I was like, who is Brandon?
Well, that was the thing. So did you see the clip
guy
finally?
The guy that won the race, his name is Brandon.
Right. But then I didn't understand the correlation.
Okay. But did you see the clip?
I saw a little bit of the clip.
Okay, so
then I didn't understand.
All right. So the quick background is the reporter from ESPN or whatever is interviewing this guy, Brandon, who just won this NASCAR race. And in the background, people are saying, F Joe Biden. Okay. In the background, yelling it clear as day.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now it's bleeding into the broadcast.
Yeah.
And so the reporter, to try to kind of save the whole situation, and she goes, oh, wow, look at that. They're chanting for you. They're saying, let's go, Brandon. and even he's looking at her like, lady, don't even go there.
I'm not playing this game.
Right, exactly.
It would have been awesome if he'd have corrected her.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, but NASCAR's so touchy with that sort of thing.
But I think it was, here's what I think was interesting to me. I picked up on this at the game. It was the student section that started it.
Yeah.
It was the student section.
You know what's funny?
You know what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the young people.
I thought Obama was going to be the one to bring forth, like, the next conservative revolution, much like Carter brought about Reagan.
Right.
And honestly, I think it may end up being Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden may be the one to bring about the next conservative wave.
Well, there's no way to hide it.
Yeah.
Once the media stopped supporting and stopped defending and stopped propping him up, you saw what was really happening. And again, it was the president. It was the emperor with no clothes.
Sure.
Literally with no clothes. Maybe a bathrobe. I don't know what happens with him while he's trying to find his milk and cookies. But I think that's what's occurred now, that the American public has really seen that they try to elect someone to unify the country, and nothing has happened.
Well, and Kamala
it's become a bigger issue.
Kamala's MIA on purpose, though. I mean, I know we don't want to really get into Kamala, but it's kind of like they put her in charge of the border. She's not taking the fall for that. The reason why you don't see her involved in that is because the administration might have put her in charge of it, but what a lot of people don't realize is that she's her own political force. She has her own staff.
Right.
She has her own political objectives for the future. She wants to be president. She's not going to go down there and try to take charge of something that she's not going to do a good job at. She's not going to win politically no matter what she does. because in order to actually be effective at the border, she would have to piss off their base. So
Well,
she's
and
just
a one-term
not gonna,
senator has zero political influence to actually get anything done about
right.
the
So
border.
so she's actually, in a sense, she's doing a smart play by just completely ignoring what the president's saying, and she's like, yeah, you ain't putting that on me. So she's not going to go to the border.
Right.
She's not going to take interviews about it. She's just chilling. I mean, the vice president really doesn't have any real constitutional.
Yeah, she'll
duties.
go on The View and do the softball interviews where nothing's going to come of it.
Exactly.
And they can't even do that right. Like the View interview,
they botched that,
which we talked about last week, was just horrendous.
Yeah.
And it's again the policies that they're putting
COVID situation.
the policies that they're putting into place are not even protecting her. So right now you see what's occurring with Biden, and I'm telling you right now, if they don't pass infrastructure or this whole I'm going to start calling it as like an omnibus bill.
Are we shutting the government down yet? Or is
No,
that
they
not
pushed
happening?
it to December, and McConnell has already said that he will not vote
So no debt
for
ceiling.
a debt ceiling increase.
So no debt ceiling, no budget, and no transportation yet.
And no Build Back Better. So again, the Democrats can do one or the other. They cannot do it all. And the only way to get through the debt ceiling and not to shut down the government is to pass it through reconciliation.
The only Hail Mary they have here would be for them to pass one or both of those bills right before the holidays when nobody's paying attention. And they're going to get the least amount of flack for it.
Right.
And they've said they don't really need the Republican votes. Now that depends whether you're talking about the House or the Senate, but they don't want to take full ownership.
They need Joe Manchin.
They need
Christine
everybody on their
Sinema.
side.
They need Sinema in the Senate.
But those two
Yeah.
Democrats have already said that they will not vote for the 3.5 unless you pass the transportation first.
And
the Democrats don't want that.
They shouldn't. I mean, how many administrations are we going to talk about a transportation bill that in turn doesn't get done? How is it that the Democrats,
Not only
when they
that,
control everything, they can't pass
a transportation bill that's not actually really going to have much of an effect on transportation.
Not in the
Probably not.
immediate future. These things take 10 to 15 years to get through.
Decades.
Oh yeah, it takes time. I mean, even
But
now,
I don't think we'll ever see anything like the Eisenhower. I mean, that was a transportation package.
that's
people
what-
building
but
ditches on the side of the road.
but that's what's odd to me is that the Democrats went through this with Obama's shovel-ready jobs.
Right.
Remember, he had to come out and say,
Which were
yeah, well,
nothing of that.
the shovel-ready jobs weren't as shovel-ready as we thought. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
So they've already learned that lesson around that, okay? Don't spend a bunch of time and energy trying to go into green energy stuff, things that take that have a really long ramp up, right? Just go get some money into roads and bridges and ports and airports and start building real infrastructure. And the Democrats control every level of government, and they can't get that done on their own. Like, that makes no sense.
Well, the reason why they can't get it done is because, again, there are some Democrats, and these, again, probably the last 2 to 5 blue dog Democrats in the Senate that are saying that they will not allow for an additional 5 to 8 trillion dollars in government spending with both bills. They will do one, they will not do both. And what's happening now is they're trying to figure out a way to get them to force their hand to do both. And I don't think they're going to do both. I honestly don't think it's going to happen because, again, and this was on the CNN earlier today, Democrats in the progressive wing are acting like they have a 15-vote majority in the Senate. You don't got a 15-vote majority. You have a 1-vote majority because of the vice president. And you don't have 30 votes in the House. You have maybe 5.
Well, it's your AOCs and the squad that
that's
are
the
that
thing.
are
They're
pushing
acting
them.
like
Yeah.
they have a mandate, and
Right, and they don't.
ladies, you won the presidency by honestly by 45,000 votes in Pennsylvania and in Georgia.
Yeah,
So let's all calm down right now. But that's not the way they're governing. They're governing like they have a mandate, and they don't. And the Democrats are going to burn themselves again in this situation.
They should just get a bill done. I mean, and then they could at least run on that.
But they won't.
But I hope they kind of screw up. But at the same time, all they have to do is pass a bill. And if the American people actually saw roads and bridges getting built and repaired, they would have something to run on.
But they don't want that.
But-
AOC wants the human infrastructure, us starting all these billions of dollars
Right,
into
right.
new government programming,
Right.
where it's going to go nowhere. I mean, how long have we had the war on poverty and the war on drugs and the war on crime? That nothing happens. We just spend
Right.
more and more money on it.
Open up some kind of nonprofit, I guess. I don't know.
Well, no, AOC doesn't have to worry about anything because she's in a district that's, 50 plus Democrats.
Oh, right.
Like in her district, I think like 12 Republicans.
As Nancy Pelosi famously said, a glass of water could get elected in her district. Isn't that what she said? A glass of water could get elected in AOC's district?
They have like 12 Republicans and like 14 independents in those districts.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Joe, Anibal, joining us on the show today. It's The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. It's scary because, this is all going to lead into the holidays, and it's really going to affect our holidays. As we talk about not only the failures of the Biden administration, but really the fallout also of all the disruption that COVID has created. And so it leads perfectly into our next topic, which is the global infrastructure problems. We're already seeing toilet paper shortages back.
Are we?
Yeah, went to Costco the other day, no toilet paper.
Really?
And then we're also hearing from a lot of your retailers that.
So that's probably a legit shortage then, because there's no rush on the stores, right?
No,
there's no cost.
No, it's an actual shortage. Yeah.
Right. We haven't had a hurricane.
Now Costco is known to be measured about how much they put out on the floor.
Right. You could have caught them on a day when they were planning to be out.
And so and again, I think they know how much they're going to get.
Yes.
And so they spread it out, right? And they put it out first thing in the morning. Right. That day that we went. Again in the evening, and they were out. They were completely out. Now we're hearing that they typically do replenish their stock first thing in the morning, but it's going pretty quickly.
Well, if you think about it, right. So I guess the question is that a just-in-time inventory situation? Because that's actually good business. If you literally run out at 6 p.m.
Yeah, and that could be it too.
And then you've got a truck that just came in, and you put that out, and you put the stock out that evening.
But I think it's also like they know they're measuring like what they're getting and how much they're putting out. You know what I mean? Sure. So that way they do have some inventory every day, because they're not like a mom and pop.
But is this happening elsewhere? You said it's happening at other retailers.
I don't know if it's happening at other retailers. I mean, I just. I go to Costco a lot, but we're hearing that it is happening in other places. And what we're hearing from retailers, especially those that are more like toys, and things that having to do with like the holidays coming up, they're saying you better get those gifts now.
Oh yeah,
because there's going to be a shortage of everything, like all the top toys.
Think so?
All the, well, I mean, even look at what happened with the Xbox and the PlayStations, and So if you're talking about tech toys, or even things like Apple Watches, iPhones, things like that, I think all that stuff's going to dry up quick, because of the microchip issue.
The stuff at the port. Okay, I'm tired of seeing this picture of all these ships. I mean, there can only be so many reasons why this is happening. Does anybody have any contact with like the Tampa Port Authority? Does anybody know anybody there? We're not having these problems in Florida, right?
So
why?
The problem is that most of that stuff is coming in from the West Coast.
Yeah, so
right.
That's why you have, I think, 147 ships anchored outside.
It can't all be.
But
I
it takes weeks, if not months, for them to get. Like, it would take weeks, if not months, for them to get like here from California.
Well, no
guys,
weeks, but I understand.
Gentlemen, during the pandemic, there was a shutdown of the entire global
Why are you whispering?
system. So then you guys will listen to what I'm about to say.
Here's Anibal with his stuff again. Go ahead.
Because of the global shutdown, and
all
then
COVID, right?
the ramp up of U.S. demand.
Right.
Now that Americans are working from home or they're working again, us having the problem exactly.
You're saying that what's on those ships is an extraordinary amount of Amazon products from the stymie checks.
What I'm
That's
saying,
what you're saying.
no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that with the relaunch of the U.S. economy, a lot of things were ordered and backlogged and everything else. And now we are seeing what happens when you don't have that kind of back and forth when it comes to the U.S. global chain. All these items that are coming on those ships were ordered weeks and months ago and are waiting for ships to be unloaded. And those loading docks are suffering when it comes to employment because of COVID situation. And that's when people get sick.
Aren't those all unionized?
But that's part of the problem.
Unionized and almost controlled
guys,
by the government.
This takes a longer for it to go. So you're not going to get right now. It's basically our car. What's it called? The cell phone lots at the airport. They're just waiting for space to open up in the port. The ports are not large enough to be able to.
But this thing in California is only exacerbating that problem.
Yes.
Well, and then we also had the problems out of China, that there were also tons of ships just waiting out in China to pick stuff up and bring it over.
The problem is now everything
And
is so
China's
much,
having a hard
but
time
everything
cranking
is
out
so
those
much
ships.
more expensive now because what's happening in the United States is these ships, normally ships would come to the United States and then they would drop off and they would pick up stuff and go somewhere else.
Right.
So you never had the expense of having a ship with 5,000 containers empty. Now you have that problem. So that cost of doing that transportation back and forth has now tripled in the last 4 months.
Because there's nothing on the return trip.
Yeah, there's no need. No one in I don't want to say no one in Asia, but the amount of now back and forth trade has ground to a halt. What we are exporting out to that coast of China, it's getting absolutely ridiculous. And then it's going to get even worse because of the rolling blackouts that you have in 22 out of the 30 provinces in Asia, in China. So now the amount of output allowed in China has decreased significantly because they're having a pissing fight with Australia and coal. So it's just it's making things even worse, and it's going to get worse. And I agree with you. Come probably end of November.
So blame China.
No, it's not even that. It's just it is what it is right now.
Trump says China's fault.
It's always China's fault.
Well, and if they go to war with Taiwan, that's gonna create a whole nother host of issues.
That's gonna be a bummer.
I mean, and
They're doing exercises,
Biden's not.
man. They're doing exercises.
That means
Biden's not want to
That
get.
means
Biden's not
absolutely
going to want to get involved.
He ain't doing nothing.
Yeah, but
They're
Xi
probing the
Jinping
Taiwanese
is
defense.
talking
They've
pretty
been
hard.
probing the
Yeah,
Taiwanese defense
they're
for
probing
years,
their defenses,
which they've done for years.
When you
Yeah, but
send-
the talks are getting pretty aggressive.
They've always done this. This is nothing new. I see nothing of this happening that's going to ramp up an actual seizure
what happened when
of
Russia
Taiwan.
rolled into Crimea?
Why
what did we do?
Why did Russia roll into
What
Crimea?
did we do when Russia rolled through Georgia?
We did absolutely nothing.
What did we do when they rolled through Ukraine?
We did absolutely nothing.
What are we going to do when China goes to Taiwan?
You don't think so? Even though we do have more invested economically in Taiwan.
I definitely think that's a bigger deal. Yeah. And you hate to say it comes down to money, right? But yes, we certainly have more economically invested in Taiwan versus
well, that was what I'm saying.
the
Short of
Crimea
World War
region
II,
of-
I mean, hasn't it always been about money?
Sure. I mean, I think that yes, we are definitely more closely connected to any negative impact on the Taiwanese,
Right.
versus Russia and Crimea or Russia and Ukraine. And also, I think there's, even though it's BS what Russia would say, they act like what happened in Georgia and Ukraine and Crimea. They act like these were almost like internal civil things, like, well, those are Russians and they really want to be part of Russia. They really don't want to be part of Ukraine, and they kind of muddy the waters, and you get Westerners thinking like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, they all speak Russian, like they all speak kind of the same thing. Like, what's the big deal? I think Americans can't understand the dynamic there. They don't understand that Russia's actually being really aggressive and they should be stopped. But with the Chinese, like if they go to Taiwan, like that's going to be very obvious. Like that, you are going to war.
I think a lot of people will be very shocked to see that kind of aggression.
But what's
China.
I mean, what are we really going to do? Is Joe Biden going to send the Pacific Fleet out there? I mean, we're out there. We are there.
I think we're coming to the point does China think right now with the leadership in the United States, is it the easiest way to get Taiwan?
Yeah.
It's easy to get Hong Kong. They've been slowly bringing that into the fold for years, and like a lot of the money has already got out of Hong Kong. Now what happens when it comes to Taiwan? Taiwan is the largest provider for semiconductors in the United States. So that's a huge like a chip situation. So that's infrastructure situation. So I would think the U.S. gets itself involved. However, again, the last time a large, I won't even say this right now. I'll say this. As the Chinese economy continues to disintegrate and collapse because of the overindulgence in the real estate market, you will see a more aggressive China. Because if you thought the U.S. collapse for real estate was bad in 2008, 2009, with the U.S. only having about like less than 9% of their GDP to real estate, you can't even imagine what's going to happen when China collapses because 30% of their GDP is tied into real estate. So it's a mess. And I think when that happens, you have a more aggressive China because they want their people to get nationalized.
Yeah, I'm trying to find here on Twitter. There was a statement that they made about what's happening with Taiwan. and unfortunately, I'm having trouble finding it right now. But they were saying there is a story here that the Global Times, which is Chinese state media, is acknowledging that the cargo rates between the United States and China has dropped from what was historic highs. But again, I mean, that's only.
Did you see Hector's comment?
That's only so sustainable. No.
If China attacks Taiwan, they'll do it 30 years too early.
I agree. I completely
I
agree
saw a
with that.
report on Well TV saying Deutsch. Okay, dude. I said douche, didn't I? Yeah. Deutsch. Yeah. Well TV saying that if China invaded Taiwan, it'll happen in 2049 to mark the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the People's Republic of China.
Well, and that's the thing. It's about unifying. Xi Jinping thinks that it's his mandate. It is his goal to reunify China.
So, Hector, if you pull up The Hill, they talked about that situation earlier today, and they say really they don't think it's going to be at 2049. They think it's going to be much earlier because the current leadership only has about 12 years before he's pushed out, and he wants to be the one that takes back Taiwan, especially now because he's going to be seen as the one taking back Hong Kong. So next year in the People's Republic, they have a huge Congress where they're actually going to announce that he is basically leader for life. And no longer they do this 5-year cycle. So if it goes the way that I think it's probably going to go, again, if the economy continues to crater and as poorly as we think it's going to get there, then they're going to want to do something that requires the people in China to focus on the outside and not the inside. And this is the same example that happened in Argentina in the 80s and 70s when they tried to take out the Falkland Islands.
So here it is. I found it. So this is a quote-unquote from Chinese state media. It says, no major power will dare openly recognize Taiwan as an independent sovereign state. The island of Taiwan will finally be reunified with the Chinese mainland. That's kind of like the lead, that's the headline, right?
Wow.
And then in the graphic, it
the United
says,
States should just come out and recognize. Well, don't we already?
No, we don't.
Well, we should.
But we
That's
won't.
it. And then
this administration is too weak and will not do that.
This administration
Why didn't Trump do that? Why didn't Trump do that?
Because he was focused on Israel.
And then it says here, the DPP authority does not have the power to overturn the one China principle in the international community. Much of what they said is nonsense by international standards and is for self-entertainment. I mean, they just don't care.
No,
they just...
Joe Elam says the Taiwanese people will not fold like the people of Hong Kong.
Yeah, I hope so.
And we just sold, didn't we sell
arms, military arms?
Yeah, we sold them, I forget how many. I'm just going to throw a number out. I want to say it was something like maybe 150 Abrams or something. So we sold them.
Was it?
We're selling them we're selling them Abrams main battle tanks.
Jeez.
To the Taiwanese, yeah.
All right.
Replace
Again,
their old stuff.
It's only going to happen, one, if China really thinks they can do it, and two, if they think the U.S. will not retaliate. So the only way to stop China from doing that is to literally put American soldiers on the ground. And they kind of did because they're training people. Yeah. So China's pissed off about that. That's the only way that you stop an invasion of China.
Here's the thing that here's the thing about China trying to invade Taiwan. They either try to do it somehow covertly where it doesn't look like an invasion, okay? Which if they do that, there's a large chance that they could fail.
Yeah.
The way that they guarantee success is to engage in a D-Day type, because this is an island, they have to conduct an amphibious assault on a beachhead, which is an extremely costly and difficult thing to do from a military standpoint, because it's a frontal assault. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can't go left, you can't go right, the water's behind you.
Yeah.
So if they did some massive invasion so that they gain success and actually gain a foothold on the beach, that's not going to be hidden. Like, it's going to be on TV, and people are going to be like, it's going to look
Satellites
like an
will pick up on it right away.
It's going to look, we'll know it's coming.
We'll know it.
You will know it's coming because we'll see everybody. We'll see them marshaling
moving into
on the
position.
boat. Yeah. But I mean, you would be seeing photos of something that looks like it's out of D-Day.
And it has to be that big. It has to be that big.
Right.
Sure.
So it's going to look to the world like an invasion.
Well,
they're not going to be able to hide.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. At that point, I think we have to do something.
Well, and so if you think about it, I know everybody's, thinks that Chinese, the big, bad, and whatnot. But if you think about it, if they don't succeed at establishing a beachhead, And if the Taiwanese have air defenses and the Chinese can never establish air superiority, which we probably will see to it that they don't,
Correct.
then it's over. The invasion's over. The invasion's failed.
Right.
See, that's the thing. Like, if you don't, when you leave in your boat and you go to, conquer some island, if you don't establish a foothold there, your best case scenario is that you get back on your boat and go back home. And so the invasion is a failure. And if they fail at that, then that'll be a great thing, because Taiwan will probably be recognized, and it'll be, of course, it's going to be a catastrophe for the whole world.
Sure.
But the point is that it's not just as easy as China. People talk about it.
But it'll be a huge ego check.
Yeah,
for them.
but people talk about it like China. We're just waiting for China to decide to do this. Well, they have to conduct an amphibious assault of a beachhead, and that's not exactly just a decision that they're going to make.
There's too much writing on the success of an invasion. If they don't succeed, the leadership will collapse. The country will collapse, because it's already holding itself up on the illusion of the emperor.
Right.
So the moment you see that crack in the shield is when the whole thing goes down.
What
That's
are you
what's
talking
happening
about?
now.
An illusion of an emperor. What are you talking about?
Well, the current leadership and the current idea of a strong China. I mean, once you start going into their heart, their numbers are huge, but their numbers mean nothing when they're trying to cross an ocean. That means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so again, in a land battle, China's going to win every single time. But that's not what's going to happen.
You have to have air.
That's on their turf.
Yeah, and they only have one. I think it's less than 50 amphibious vehicles. Like, the numbers to allow that are astronomical.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you again for watching The Yard Sign. We appreciate you for doing so wherever you may be doing so. Don't forget, you can download the audio version of our podcast over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. And as I mentioned, we have a special interview that we're going to be posting here today or tomorrow with Captain Will Smith. He's a private aviation pilot who is going to help us dive deeper into our next topic, which is pilots crashing the vaccine mandate. All right. And
crashing the vaccine mandate.
Well, yes, obviously I was having some fun with the title topic there, but really, I mean, these pilots for Southwest, and I believe flight attendants as well, have really kind of drawn the line in the sand. And they said, no, we will not subject ourselves to your federal vaccine mandate. And they brought Southwest Airlines to a complete stop. I think they're now at over 2,000 canceled flights around the country. People, again, being stranded or displaced. And just as, if airline flights and all this stuff was kind of getting back to normal. But the one thing that I learned from, and the reason you want to catch this interview with Captain Will Smith, is because people don't understand this isn't the same. It's not the same conversation we're having about our vaccine, about, who we think should and shouldn't get the vaccine, right? It's one thing if you're average Joe, out there, and you decide that you don't want to take the vaccine for personal reasons or simply as a F you to the government, right? These pilots have to be in not perfect, but they have to be in really good physical condition to fly these planes for the number of hours that they fly these planes. And so far, the side effects that have been found with these vaccines affect them in a way that would basically render them useless and out of a career, because it's causing high blood pressure, it's causing cardiac arrhythmia, it's causing things that, again, become a problem once you are thousands of feet up in the air.
Multiple times a day.
Right.
Multiple times a week. Like, this is just insane, the requirements.
Blood clots, is also one of the side effects that we've been hearing from. And again, if you're the average person, sure, maybe a blood clot's not going to be a major issue for you, hopefully, and you can get it treated, right? But the minute you step onto a plane and you go up about 20,000 feet, now it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And so, the news has really kind of blown into an even bigger issue, because Southwest Airlines came out and claimed that the reason they had to cancel all these flights was because of weather. Well, the problem with that is that not only does everyone have weather apps on their phones these days,
right,
but that also every other airline was flying without a problem.
Yeah, I flew from Tampa to Atlanta early in the morning on Friday, and I flew from Atlanta back to Tampa late last night.
Which, again, Atlanta, one of our
and
biggest
there was
national
no-
hubs.
Yeah, there was no. In fact, my flight out on Friday morning was delayed by an hour. And when I inquired about it, because I was starting to hear some of this stuff. When I inquired about it, they looked in the system. They were like, "There's no reason listed." But then when I got to the gate, I discovered, at least for Delta, they said that it was a pilot rest issue.
Right.
Like, because they didn't meet the timeline or whatever,
Yeah.
and so they had to give them another hour, basically, type of thing or whatever, which is understandable, and that's
Sure.
a common thing for them or whatever. But I mean, I was on the Delta side, and I wasn't seeing any issues.
Well,
or
and that's the
whatever,
thing.
but-
Getting back to, we get onto a flight, and maybe our flight is 3-4 hours, that sort of thing, right? Before you have to make stop somewhere. Typically, you don't have, most people on a regular basis aren't taking the 10-hour flights. Like
was this
overseas and
week
that sort
like
of thing.
some kind of internal company deadline for Southwest? Is that what it was?
I think it's when they drew the line. I think
it was their deadline, and
Yeah.
so there were all these people that the next day were not working.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen this around with other companies as well. This is not just Southwest. It's just
No.
it was in front of everyone.
Right.
The amount of Americans that this
And that's
affected
why
is so much.
it was ridiculous that they tried to hide it,
Yeah.
behind using weather as an excuse.
Well, they
of all
usually
things.
and I know this is a different scenario. If they can blame weather, then that's act of God, and they basically get out of a lot of these. Refunds, and
right.
if you don't have trip insurance, then
Yeah.
they're not obligated to necessarily do anything for
Yeah,
you.
because
just
a friend of
because
mine,
weather. It's
a
just
friend of
weather,
mine got
isn't it?
stranded in Texas.
Yeah.
And they didn't give her a hotel. They didn't give her money for an Uber.
'Cause if it's
nothing.
weather, yeah, it's-
even though they rescheduled her for the next day.
Yeah, because if it's weather, then that's considered act of God.
But
They're not responsible for
but
the
at
weather.
the end of the day, if it's not weather, and we can prove that it's not weather,
Right, so
then she has then you have 2,000
the PR
fights
people.
that
The
can
PR
now
people
sue.
didn't want to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The PR people didn't want to come out and
Well,
say.
like you
that-
said, it could have been just simply avoiding, from a legal standpoint, what they are financially subject to having to reimburse people for.
Yeah, I don't know.
The PR is even worse.
We need a Project Veritas to do a thing with
It's gonna
the
come out.
airline
Oh, I'm sure
industry.
they will.
Oh, yeah.
To do one with the airlines or something.
So-
Well, and so in my conversation with him, we were talking about, again, obviously, he's a private airline pilot, and so the fact that since COVID, I mean, private aviation has just exploded because people don't have to go through TSA, and they're not subject to all the
hadn't thought about
vaccine
that.
stuff and the
So it's
mask
big business now.
requirements,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's just been through the roof, and so.
you pay more, but you don't deal with all the BS.
Exactly. And so, like he says, if you can get a group of friends together to take on fractional ownership of a plane,
Right.
then you're golden. Because, the advantages are huge. I mean, you set
Right.
your own schedule, you save a ton of time because
These are
you don't,
smaller planes, though. I mean,
you
these
know-
are not. Right.
yeah, these are jets. I mean, these are private jets.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not talking
Well,
Cessnas.
a private jet can go cross country, so.
Right. Yeah. And then you're saving tons of time because you're also not having to wait for 200 people to board the plane and then 200 people to get off the plane.
Okay, let's stop talking about these 1% problems. No, honestly.
No, but it's not. No, but the problem goes beyond that because again, you're bringing, especially right before the holidays, you are bringing the most common form of travel, second to the automobile, to a complete halt, and it's not going to stop with Southwest. I mean, he's predicting that Delta, or American Airlines is probably going to be next. He says United is the one that they've intentionally let go a lot of their retired pilots or they're on the verge of retirement pilots and brought in new pilots, inexperienced pilots, because they're obviously going to go along to get along and subject themselves to whatever the requirements are.
Right.
And so that this is going to possibly get a lot worse before it gets any better.
Well, we're looking at a union situation because that's what's hitting it right now.
Well, and some of
What
the
are
companies are
unions-
already backing off the mandates.
What are the unions saying? Because Democrats cannot push back against the unions.
Yeah.
Right.
And if the unions are saying that they are not going to be, they don't like the idea of a mandate, please build an alternative, then you're going to have, again, we all knew that carve-outs were going to occur when it came to the mandates. And so now you're seeing that in play, which again pisses off other Americans that are losing their jobs because of this, which then are going to have other unforeseen consequences. Because again, the amount of chaos these mandates have brought on is what's pissing off people, which is why they're not liking the president. When he said, and again, I can say this very adamantly, Biden lied to us a year ago when he said he wasn't going to do mandates.
Right.
And you don't want to throw that around like someone's lying, but there's enough B-roll to show. He said it multiple times. The government doesn't have the responsibility to do this. And then he does it, and it causes chaos. And you're going to see it more and more. When people can't get to their grandmas because they're unable to get flights and toys can't get into the States because of what's happening when it comes to the supply chain, people get pissed off. And this is just going to make it into a bigger wave come midterms.
Well, what I don't understand is, again, why hasn't this, or if it is being challenged, what's taking so long to basically stop these mandates from going into place?
Gotta go through the court system.
Now we're also seeing state mandates, right? In California, obviously they're mandating vaccines, and businesses are mandating, and we're seeing is more so in other countries. We're seeing a huge outburst or a huge kind of pushback on these vaccine requirements, but it's one of those things that if you really want to piss Americans off, screw with their Thanksgiving and Christmas plans.
Yeah. That's true.
And trust me, because remember, Fauci had to walk back his statement about not letting people get together for Christmas. He walked that back real quick.
He did the same thing for Halloween. He said, I don't know.
He did that on July 4th, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think anybody even listens to him anymore.
Unelected official.
Politicians and public health officials got to be careful about telling Americans what they will and will not do. That it just doesn't work.
Well, he doesn't have any enforcement power.
Matter of fact, I would argue that as soon as you tell Americans what they will or will not do, you actually generate a whole series of people that are, that's what you said. Oh, well, then now I got to do the opposite.
What? Right. Americans being difficult when the government tells them to do something?
Now there's like half the country that's like, well, now I'm actually going to go against what you said,
right?
Because I have to teach you that you never had the authority to say that in the first place.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying that we can't get together on 4th of July? Now I'm really getting together.
Now I'm inviting everybody.
I wasn't even having a big party, but now I'm going to have one because I have to show you, that you're not in charge.
But the problem that we have here
But I think that's a very uniquely American thing.
It's very American.
But not as much anymore because you have entire states that are more than willing to lift a shoulder just to get shot just because the government said so in the big metropolitan parts of the country. So Democrats are thinking, oh, yeah, everyone's going to do it because my neighbors are doing it and everything. Yes, you're living in the biggest blue bubble on earth, which is the D.C. metropolitan area.
Yeah.
That everyone, even the Republicans there, are really not Republicans.
This is actually an issue that could, if people were smart enough to do it, it could actually unite, Democrat and Republican and independent voters, because, and I don't want to see like a bunch of, catastrophe with air travel or transportation or whatever, but if enough people,
it only takes one.
If enough people, refuse, these companies are doing what they're doing because they think they can.
Yep.
If enough people refuse and the business is harmed, there's a point at which the business will buckle.
Yeah.
And if that happens, the people, and when I say the people, I mean Republicans, Democrats, independents, people that don't vote, I mean everybody.
Yep.
The people will realize the power that they really have. And again, while I don't want to see massive like protests per se or big walkouts, I don't really want to see that happen. But if it happens and it causes businesses to realize, maybe we're not as in charge as we think we are. And I'm talking about big businesses.
Yeah.
You don't have this problem with small businesses because they work it out with their employees. They figure it out. But with the big businesses that try to behave like governments and have these massive policies and no, we're treating everybody the same and therefore, suck it up. If the big companies have to buckle, the government's going to be watching that too. And it could teach the people, hey, we are in charge in this country.
Oh, yeah.
But you've got to be willing to come together instead of allowing ourselves to be constantly divided by the politicos.
I will push back. I don't like the idea of people purposely not getting the shot just to make a point.
I don't either.
My position is that no organization nor government should have my medical information. So if I choose
well, they do, brother.
I know. So if I choose to get the shot, that is on me and my desire. No organization and no company should be asking me if I got vaccinated or not.
A coffee shop shouldn't be asking me if I've gotten my vaccine.
Well, that's true.
And that's where the card needs to be. Now, if you choose not to get vaccinated, that's a whole nother conversation. and that issue. But the government or my or my place of work should not be demanding that I get something of that caliber.
Well, okay. So I agree and I disagree. Private companies, okay, I own a small business myself. If I choose to have a requirement of some sorts to come through the front door, it's well within my right to have that requirement. Now, I have to balance what that means for the business. Am I willing to turn away business?
Yeah, but I think where you draw the line on that is someone's personal medical information.
Okay.
If you want to say, hey, you need to have a gun to come into my shop, all right, cool. Or not have a gun, or you have to wear a shirt, or you have to wear shoes. Okay, fine, cool. But I think where you're talking about my medical history.
Yeah,
when you're talking about a medical record of mine.
But all I'm saying is that
asking for a mask and asking for a vaccine are two different things.
All I'm saying is that private companies have the right to have policies, and they could have a policy that people need to be inoculated against X, Y, and Z. Now, I'm not agreeing or saying it's right. I'm just saying I understand why private companies can do so because they are privately owned. If you don't like
in your
it,
situation,
you go elsewhere.
But your business is also unique in the fact that you're in the healthcare field.
That's right.
And so that can lead to a whole other range of problems.
I don't. It could. I don't like I support vaccination. I don't support government mandates.
Right.
And we are in a little different environment because even though I control what policies my company has, the government has a lot to say because it's a heavily regulated industry. But what I was going to say is when it comes to the government, though, Anibal, you're saying the government doesn't have a right to know. Here's where this issue of COVID is different from other things that are medical. Okay, COVID. The disease caused by the infection from the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a pandemic. So it's a public health issue, and we don't think about it because you don't hear about it on the news. But if you became infected with tuberculosis or HIV, now granted, HIV has a much lower infection rate, okay? Tuberculosis is highly contagious, but apparently it's less than COVID. But if you got, say, tuberculosis, they would, in fact, notify people that you've been around. They would do contact tracing for you because it's a public interest that the government prevent you from spreading tuberculosis in the community.
Sure.
So you don't have the same rights to privacy when what you have is a communicable disease that could spread throughout the community. Now, if you are... if you have Parkinson's disease, okay, that's not a communicable disease.
Right.
And the government knowing whether or not you have Parkinson's disease, yes, they have no need to know that, and so they wouldn't have a right to know it. Okay, so that information, absolutely, it's protected. But what people don't realize is that when you have a communicable disease, the same HIPAA-type privacy doesn't apply, and it never has. This is actually not new.
Yeah. All right.
Hate to tell you.
So again, for everybody watching, again, we're going to see where this goes in regards to the airline industry. Some of the airlines are already caving and basically allowing their pilots and flight attendants to choose whether or not they get the vaccine. And look, I mean. According to, and again, I'm going to be posting this interview here probably in the next day or so. There are even pilots within our very own military that, again, it's not going to be public knowledge, but supposedly are not taking the vaccine for the same reasons. Because again, like the side effects would actually hinder them in terms of being a pilot, and the requirements that come along with being a pilot. And so the military knowing that, and again, that not being a situation that applies to the general public is basically saying, okay, well, we'll exempt you guys, because it would hinder you from doing your job. And meanwhile, everybody else is having to go ahead and get their shot administered.
More and more people are going to continue to push back on this regimen. When it comes to TB, I mean, that's a 0.2% of death. That's a very high amount when it comes to the 0.000 X amount when it comes to COVID. So that's why it makes it things. People are getting smarter about this. They're doing the research and they're understanding. I mean, just in the comment section alone, have said that they're just not going to work for Joe if Joe says that they have to get the shot.
What's this now?
They're going to come protest, Joe.
Read the comment section. You have a
Well,
protest coming your way.
They're gonna come
who
and
said they're
protest
just
you
not
from-
going to work for me?
So I
said
think
that?
that's what's going to
So-
occur later on. Again,
No.
I understand the position. I get it. But I would have a very large reservation if my employer told me that I had to show them that I got the vaccine.
Would it be an Indian reservation?
I would think so.
I mean, but again, here there's a major difference. Okay, if we had a lawyer on this panel, they would agree with me. There's a major difference between your relationship with your consensual private relationship with another private entity like an employer, and your relationship to the government. The
Joe,
government,
I
the
get what
government
you're saying.
compelling
I
you
get
to
what
do
you're saying, but
something
people
is
don't care.
different.
People don't care. People are walking out of their jobs.
Okay,
because
that's
they
good.
don't want
Okay,
it.
then
There's what-
walk
this
out.
is-
Then
this is gonna be
walk
huge.
out.
Yeah.
Then walk
Hospitals in
out.
North and-
Right.
in
Then
New
walk
York,
out. I think
and
what they
hospitals in Texas, they're leaving.
Hey, nurses that are walking out from hospitals, there's no love lost from me for that hospital because they made them work during the pandemic with no vaccine.
Right.
And many of them did work, and some clinicians and doctors. My own primary care physician died of COVID.
Wow.
I found this out recently when I was going to go do checkup or whatever because I hadn't seen him in a while. Come to find out, the freaking guy died. You know why he died? He died because he wasn't willing to do all of his practice online. He wanted to see his patients and
Right.
touch them. He
Right.
got in full PPE and worked.
And still got
And he
it.
contracted COVID and he died from it. So people were willing to let guys like that come to work and die.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden they're ready to kick them to the curb. Yeah. So I hope some people push back on their employers because I think it's really disrespectful the way clinicians are being treated now.
Oh, they were considered heroes 4 months ago.
Exactly. They were heroes then, but now all of a sudden, we don't need you. And then of course this destroys the narrative from the left. They tried to make people believe that the hospitals were just on the brink of overflowing, right?
Yeah,
They
right.
did this twice. They did it in the beginning,
Over the summer.
which I acknowledge.
Yeah, and then over the summer.
government was legitimately scared. I mean, they didn't know if there was
Sure.
going to be like 1 million people out at the door of the hospital or not. So they were legitimately scared. Okay, but now having been through this, I mean, guys, 89% capacity at a hospital being 89% full is like what they want because they need beds full to make money. They don't make money by being empty. They don't share this goal of having a ton of empty beds. So the government was acting like we were just on the precipice of people lying in the streets, not being able to get care. Okay, now literally like a month later, they're talking about they're shaming, they're vaccine shaming
Firing.
the employees at the hospital and saying, "Oh, you're
droves.
done, you're fired." And it's like, well, wait a minute, do we have a problem with staffing or do we not have a problem with staffing?
Yeah.
Because if you truly had a problem with staffing, there's no way they'd be firing nurses. There's no way.
Absolutely not. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for watching the Yard Sign. Again, for more on this breaking news in regards to the airline industry being disrupted by vaccine mandates, we got a special interview that we'll be releasing soon with Captain Will Smith. He's a private pilot. He is also an author. And just has a lot of firsthand information on what's happening within the aviation industry and how this actually may end up blowing up into a much bigger problem. And so keep an eye out on all our social media platforms for that interview. It's short, but we went really deep into the topic, and you'll see this unfortunately may get a lot worse before it gets any better. So thank you again to Captain Will Smith and Will Smith Aviation for joining me on that. And again, we'll be releasing that as soon as possible. Don't forget, if you want to join the conversation, you can join us right now. We are broadcasting live on Clubhouse. Join us on there. Look for the Yard Sign as one of the rooms, or you can find me and follow me, Jonny Torres, on Clubhouse. And would love to have you join in on one of our topics. We'll be doing this every week along with the show, so you can jump in, kind of like calling into a radio show. Okay, so feel free to join us in the room on Clubhouse as well if you want to jump into the conversation. Let's jump into our final topic now, as we are looking pretty good on time, amazingly enough.
Why do you say that? We are going to
Is it like
blow the
jinxing
top.
it?
Yes.
You think it's like jinxing it?
Hey,
All right. Well, you've heard us complain many times about our local Hillsborough County Republican Party for a myriad of reasons, but certainly their not only their just lack of not efficiency, but their lack of any kind of impact really on local elections.
be careful with the words you're.
Yeah, I know. We have now come to find out that the Republican Party of Florida has actually issued a 30-day probationary period for the current executive board. They actually eliminated a number of board positions because they had been created illegally, something that's happened, about 5 years ago?
5 years ago, yeah.
About 5 years ago.
We were at that
They
fight.
can still.
Yeah, and we were
here's-
trying to alert them, hey, it's cool that you want this, but you have to do it the right way, and they refuse
Here's
to
what'll
do
be
it.
interesting to see. You can still, let's say you're the third vice president, fifth removed, in charge of,
Which was the level
right,
of absurdity some of these roles had.
in charge of outreach, to some specific group. Okay, you can still do that.
Eskimo Indians.
Yeah. You can still do that.
Sure.
You just don't get to call yourself third vice president.
And,
Right.
fifth time
and you're
removed.
not a voting executive board member.
And you don't
Well, and
get
it got to
vote-
the
and you
point
don't
of
get to stack
absurdity
the
where they were
board, and
like
you-
there were people putting their kids now, you don't get to
stack the board
on the
But-
board, right?
But and I don't want to. And actually, I mean, I
These were votes.
Well, I
Like-
consider myself friends with a lot of the people in the REC and some of those board members, and I know who you're referencing. Some of these are good people, but the point is that the work they're doing, which sometimes is important work.
Yeah.
You can still do that.
Correct.
You don't have
Right.
to
You don't
be
need a title.
You don't need a title.
Right.
Correct.
You can still do that, and you can have a. I don't know if this would be a violation or whatever. You probably could have maybe a title, but with
You can
no
have
vote.
committees.
You
have
could,
and then
be-
put somebody in charge of a committee.
Yeah, so-
but there was
But that's
no
not what they were
functional.
doing.
But
There
you
was
just
no
can't have a vote. You can't.
Right.
You can't be a voting board member, right?
Right,
So
correct.
if they weren't, so if all you do is remove
No, but
the board
it's
vote,
even easier
wouldn't
than that. They could be a voting board member if they had created
they
the
just did it the
position
right- yeah.
properly
Correctly,
yeah. Right,
through the
okay.
bylaws. And the problem,
okay.
but the
So maybe
problem
that'll
was is
happen.
that
Johnny, we have seen this multiple times when
Yeah.
when leadership does not like what's happening and they want to push someone out or they want to push a vote,
Right.
they will add onto a board. They'll just add them on.
Right.
So then it dilutes whoever is on there, or it lets them have a stronger position when it comes to them wanting to amend something or move something forward. So let's all be extremely honest.
Just do
what's
things the
going on.
right way. Just do
But
things
they
the
weren't.
right way.
well, and the
not
other
doing
thing
it.
that I do like that they stripped them of was their ability to removed their ability to have straw polls, which the straw poll thing I don't care about. I mean, the straw polls are meaningless anyways. But
But it was what they were
it was,
attached to.
It was also the votes of no confidence.
Disciplinary
and
grievances
who did
matters.
the local party do a vote of no confidence for?
Okay, so
I don't remember.
before we get any further than this is not a technical probation. This is you got 30 days of receiving this letter to get your
fix
shit,
it.
to get
Yeah,
to get your shit in order.
Just spend the next
That's
30
really what it
days
is.
getting
Right.
it together. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think so. There's 5 points to this one. A lot, and we can share this letter because it's not restricted for the RPOF.
Okay.
We'll find out.
No,
We'll find out
and
quickly if we're allowed to share
we're,
this in the
we're
further.
not posting it anywhere.
No,
I
no.
mean,
But I'll say this: of the 5 points, the one that we're talking about right now, when it comes to straw polls, is that you cannot do any non-binding votes, no confident, no resolutions, no disciplinary or grievance matters. This was almost attempted from a member in the general membership to April Schiff, who
Right.
is the
and that was the problem. They were
state committee
weaponizing
woman.
these.
Yes,
they
they
were
were trying to weaponize
weaponizing
it.
these things
What
to
would-
use against.
allegedly they say that there's no connection between the woman that wanted to do it and the board itself, which I won't even make a comment because I cannot.
What would it matter if they did say we have no confidence in you? It doesn't matter. The state committee, man, and the state committee woman
she's an
are elected by the
officially elected-
entire county.
Exactly.
Right.
What difference would it make? It wouldn't matter what you said.
Because these people don't know what they're doing.
I'm
it
just
doesn't.
asking.
It
I'm
doesn't
just
have any impact. I mean, it doesn't have any legal impact. It doesn't have any. But again, they would try to use this against elected officials. And they would try to use this against certain. They would do it against a tax referendum or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying again. It was just like a way of making a statement as an organization that here's something or someone that we don't agree with, and so this is what the organization voted on. Inevitably, the press would pick it up and
Right.
But it means nothing. And
Right,
that's the
but
upsetting-
it
we're
actually has
wasting
zero
time.
impact.
Yeah.
You know, but the problem came when they were trying to weaponize this and use this against some of the people that were on the board.
Yeah.
You know, and so it actually precedes even April Schiff. I mean, I believe, didn't they censure Deborah Tamargo?
Yes, they tried to.
You know, when she was chairwoman, you know, and so
But the local party didn't censure her, I don't think.
There was a vote.
it was
There was a vote, and I
The
don't think
local
it succeeded.
party censored her? I don't think so.
Her board turned against her.
Okay, but there were grievances that went up to RPOF.
Yes,
and
but
I know
think
we probably don't want to get into the weeds here, but I think didn't the grievances go to the RPOF, and there was at least some amount of legitimacy, maybe some mistakes that were made, and didn't they just kind of have a conversation and say, "Look, Deb, I mean, you know, just." You know, do you really
yeah, but
wanna
I
go
think
down
at the
this route? I
local
mean,
level, they tried to censure her before any of that stuff played out because this stuff takes a while. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Anibal, but I think there still may be more fallout from some of this stuff at the next quarterly meeting.
So, what people are saying that were in the room when decisions were made is that these 5 points were sent to the grievance committee over the summer with evidence and everything. It practically looked like a dissertation, honestly, with the amount of paperwork that was submitted to Tallahassee. And again, allegedly was a full vote of no confidence to the current chair, Jim Warshaw, from the grievance committee. And the only way, so the next step really is to the chair of the RPOF, who made the decision to give them this 30 days to fix the problems that they were having, and then to see what's going to go on for the winter quarterly. So I think that's going to be where what happens.
Which is frustrating because Jim has been so incredibly ineffective at his role as chairman. He has been a failure. He's been a divider.
I'm not using those words
you know,
to describe the
and
chair.
I will. I mean, heck, I mean, and look,
Can't we
I
just
mean,
all get along?
Chairman
Can't we just all get along?
Gruters knows how I feel about Jim Warshaw. You know, and to be perfectly honest, and I'd say this if he were in the room, he's basically buying time so he doesn't have to be the one to remove him from his position. But honestly, Jim Warshaw is way overdue in being removed as chairman of the Hillsborough County Republican Party.
The amount of people that you talk to on a daily basis that kind of know what's going on have no confidence in Jim Warshaw as chair of the county, and to the point to where they see him as someone that, I'm going to be honest, that's a little bit off their rockers. And the amount of, I will say this, of what's the right word? Now, I don't want to say that he's a racist, but I'm going to say that he's I don't think he's a racist, but there's a lot of feelings that are not appropriate, and the bigotry is kind of there, and you don't want it to be there, and I don't think it is, but you kind of feel it.
No, he has done and said a lot of stupid things on top of the fact that he has been incredibly ineffective as a chairman.
When you
look,
piss off the donor base is when things go awry. And I think he's really pissed off the donor base of Hillsborough County. And that's bled to other things. When you read news articles that he's written up and where he's talked about, or he's even given interviews, and you just feel extremely uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable as him representing us.
I'm not.
You don't agree, Joe?
Well, I understand some of the points that you're making, but I think, you know, I don't know a lot of people that have served long enough in the military and come out a racist. I just don't.
No,
So
I mean, nobody's saying he's a racist, but he's said some...
Anibal was going down that route, and I
pulled back.
I
don't think he's a racist.
I just think that gets thrown around enough at Republicans who are standing up for principle.
No, when you have a black Republican at the Lincoln Day dinner calling out the chair for their inability to work with the black African American community, that's a huge problem.
Okay, that's
huge
an individual's. Well, hold on. Look, I didn't come here to defend Jim, but that's a person's opinion. People in politics get all heated, and a lot of times something's important to one person, and when everybody else doesn't coalesce and find it as important, then they get butthurt. I mean, come on now. I mean, before we start calling people racist, man, there needs to be some serious.
But he has said a lot of incredibly
evidence.
offensive things, and again, statements that you could portray as bigoted. I mean, and publicly, like this isn't like they found him, wearing blackface in a yearbook from high school.
Okay, what are we talking about? I mean, if somebody will just show it to me, I'm just saying, I'm not here to defend the guy.
The Facebook comments are saying that the military is not exempt of the ills of society.
You're right.
I know, but Joe
you're
wants
right.
the
It's
specific
not.
examples.
No, you're right. It's not. But this is what I will say. I will say that people don't serve 20 plus years in the military and not find themselves as a member of the most diverse organization in the country. That's not to say that somebody might not still maintain some, racist views or something, but I'll just say that for those people that maybe weren't exposed to people that are unlike themselves, you go in the military and you get a lot of exposure to a lot of different people, and you meet some really good people. And so before we start just accusing ourselves of this, I just think that's a bridge too far. If somebody wants to come up with a specific example, then I'll look at it and I'll agree to it or whatever. But we need to be, it's one thing to talk about how people within the party have been effective or not effective. We don't need to start calling ourselves racists and bigots unless we're prepared to say this is specifically what's happening. And if we're going to do that, then that's fine. We'll all get together and we'll rectify that issue quickly. But I don't hear anybody showing specific examples.
Well, here we go. All right. So from FloridaPolitics.com.
I knew there was an article that talked about it.
Hillsborough County Republican Party Chair Jim Warshak has spent the past several days rallying against protesters, speaking out against police brutality and systemic racism following George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis, prompting calls to resign from his own party. He shared an article about former President Barack Obama's statement on the protests, calling them a real turning point in the fight for police reform. Let's see.
By the way, Terry, I see you there in the comments, and I agree. She's talking about turning over finance. That's mismanagement.
That's also a big outcome from this probation.
Yeah, that's mismanagement. I mean, that's not racism.
It wasn't mentioned about the finances. I think that's going to be the secondary shoe that falls in the winter.
Well, it's bad financial management. You've got to have measures in place. And for those that are watching, basically what happened was the guy that had password access to some of the systems within the local Republican Party. The guy died of COVID.
The software that he created.
Okay, and he died of COVID. So with him died some information, and so people were having to struggle to get that. And that exposes, that, okay, these are not proper protocols. And actually, I would expect better from military officers, actually.
Yeah, but again, Jeannie Webb is a veteran.
Yep.
I don't know about Greg Prentice, but obviously Jim. And I believe there was maybe
Greg's
one
the
other
guy that died, unfortunately. Yeah.
And I believe there may have been one other veteran on the board, if I remember correctly.
Is Thompson?
Well, Bill Beers. Well, he was not on the board, but
you're talking about
vice chair.
who's the old Navy guy?
No, you're talking
He was
about
on the board for a while.
no, the vice chair is a retired Army colonel.
Okay, so that's Tom. I think that's Tom
Townsend.
Townsend, yeah.
Jim Townsend is a retired Army colonel, and I'm telling you that I haven't talked to Jim Townsend about that, but I can tell you I think that there's no way that he would have been okay with something if he could have ever.
Well, this
foreseen
preceded
an issue.
him.
If he could have
that's the
foreseen an
thing.
issue.
Well, no, of course, nobody thinks that your guy holding the keys to the kingdom is going to die.
Nobody's expecting, the guy to die.
This is an unforeseen error.
But this was, this was a micro example of the much bigger problem, which is that they were playing gatekeepers to all the information of the organization when they should have been transparent. And one of the things that they campaigned on when they got elected to those positions was transparency.
Yep. And that's the biggest gripe that I have, and I've made this known to some board members, is that when the party was taken over by people who were calling for principled approaches, transparency, and things like that, I don't think that really happened. I think that the party was taken over, and then when it was time to kind of do some of those things, people got busy doing other things, and the transparency didn't occur, and whatever. And so here we are.
So I don't think there was. Well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Point number 5 states that there shall not be email. Oh no, I'm sorry. Point number 2, saying that inside the party membership, that list, that database needs to be available to all members of the executive board, and that has been a big issue for a lot of people because they're not willing to release the additional information. They're willing to give you the address and the name, but they're not willing to give you the rest of the slots.
What is it? They're not willing to give you phone numbers or something?
So the actual point goes into detail of what they have to start providing, which is name, address, precinct, phone number, email, shall share henceforth be allowed to be given to all members of the HRAC.
And I'm pretty sure that the reason why they have to provide this is because it's already public information. Everybody that's a member of the Republican Executive Committee is technically an elected person.
Correct.
Right.
And so you've signed paperwork, you've signed a party oath, you've put your name on the ballot, even if you didn't have an election.
Yep.
And so the fact that you are a member of the REC cannot be private.
Correct.
Yeah.
You hold a public position. And it's absurd that the body, that the committee itself, which is the entire committee, can't know who's in the committee.
Right.
Like you can't withhold that. It's already public. I mean, and you shouldn't be making members of your own party go on the Hillsborough County Supervisor of Elections office to attempt to download this information. Like, just make it available. It's public.
So getting back to Jim Warshak, so there's Facebook posts, and one in particular, it says, every American better wake up. If we lose this country, you will lose your life. And he's talking about the George Floyd protesters here. He goes, you will be murdered. You will be dragged from your burning home and be beat to death. This is a fact. This is what they stand for. Warshak wrote about protesters. The post claimed that Obama admitted that the coordinated mayhem was all about energizing their base to get out the vote by any means necessary.
It was very cringe. A lot of his public
We're going to take this conversation offline because I'm not
going to go there.
Are you saying that that's that concern? Are you saying that people? Are you saying that political operatives getting people fired up and getting them protested is not part of get out the vote activity? Or are you saying that it's only problematic that he said that because the instance of the George Floyd situation being used as the catalyst to promote that the gentleman involved was black? I mean, is that all of a sudden make that a racial issue?
Well, yeah, because predominantly the people protesting what happened to George
there
Floyd
were
were
tons
black.
of white people protesting.
So, but it's predominantly black.
It was
people.
in every city.
It was predominantly black people.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue. I think so, probably.
Okay, and then the fact that
there were
saying
protests all over the country.
Right, but he was also, insinuating that they were going to come to people's homes and beat them and drag them and kill them, for not being black.
Well,
basically.
Well, there were people that were pulled out of their cars during those protests.
Sure.
For being white.
Yeah.
There were protesters that stated that they were going to go to certain neighborhoods. They did it here in Tampa. Remember, they went to Hyde Park.
Do you
remember? But I'm saying, you remember why they went there?
Our leadership that represents
but I'm saying they
be making comments like this.
Okay, but these guys were actually smart enough to post a screenshot, which is from Jim Warshak's Facebook again, saying need some hang-ins. That was his caption. Need some hang-ins. News flash.
Right.
Treason still punishable by death, and this is, I believe, from the Obama administration. And then again, there were issues where he was talking about the squad, where he was talking about Rashid Tlaib and AOC and I forget the other girl's name, the other woman's name, and so the thing is, again, and this is an entire article that actually documents, and I'll send you, the multiple, and so it was like bigoted, racist, death threats, like all these kinds of things that, again, it's happening in our political discourse, but then, you don't want that coming from the chairman of your your Republican Party.
Well, it's definitely been a distraction. That's the problem. It's been a distraction against all of this has been a distraction from the core purpose of the party, which is simply to get Republicans elected.
Right, but again, that crosses the line, and that's the problem. He has crossed the line repeatedly,
and we keep on focusing.
And they've circled the wagons to protect him.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen that. So, Johnny, I get where you're coming from.
But what Johnny just said is that there are certain individuals that are trying to circle the wagon. You have other situations where it's getting uncomfortable to sit in that room every single month and hearing the the comments that are being made by leadership. I had it was very awkward to feel what we felt like with last month's conversation or discussion with the vice chair, where he was making, and Terry, thank you for making these comments out loud, but he made, this was Jim Townsend, that said comments about that it was a Zino's disloyalty to Jim Warshak and rogue organizations, almost like asking for like a loyalty test to the chair, and it's getting awkward. It really is getting awkward. There's a reason why.
Yeah, look, this party is not about loyalty to Jim Warshak. It is not about loyalty to Joe Gruters. It is not about loyalty to Donald Trump.
Correct.
And the sooner we accept that and realize that it is about the values, that we want to see in our government and in our country, then we're actually going to be a lot more effective at winning elections. But the problem is that right now the party, you do have a large faction of the party that is obsessed with the former president, and
44%.
and they're obsessed with anyone that states anything to the contrary of the overall general public opinion.
So I wasn't there for this meeting. Maybe Terry can clear this up. Is it Z Rhinos? What is that? Or is that? It could just be a typo. But
I know that there's a video, a recording of last month's of that particular part of the speech. So I'll see if I can get the.
But I mean, I think if listen, guys, on this show we partially try to do some devil's advocacy here. Okay, so understand that that's part of what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah,
she says typo.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Understand that's part of what I'm trying to do here. I'm not here to defend anybody. Nobody's asked me to say anything. I didn't even know we were going to get this far into this. I will say that from what I've known of like Jim Townsend, he's an honorable guy. I think the challenge that's happening now is.
Oh, and trust me, he's not one of the troublemakers.
I understand he's not. But here's what you have. Here's what you have, right? I'm making an assumption here, and I think I'm right. He's a retired colonel. Jim Warshak's a retired colonel. I think what you have here is military personnel that are having that spent their whole life being in the military, having a hard time transitioning to a political organization where we have a mission, and the mission is not to just at all costs support our commander. We don't have a commander. We have an elected chairman.
Right.
In the military, your commander didn't get elected.
Right.
No one elects your commander in the military. They're placed in that position of responsibility, and if you're under that person...
But that's the thing. That's the problem with this group of individuals, is that they've been operating as a military...
That's what I'm saying.
It's a civilian organization.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, this is a civilian organization. These individuals are not appointed above you. They're not the officers appointed above you that you're legally bound to obey orders. This is a political organization with people that are elected into positions, and people that can get elected can be unelected. And so... This idea of, well, I'm going to support the chairman because he's the chairman. Well, no, we're going to support people because they're doing their job and doing it legally.
The problem is that they even instituted, what was it, about a year ago, where they even instituted a rule where you couldn't criticize anybody on the executive board.
On the internet.
On the internet.
On the social media or something like that?
Yeah.
On social media? How is that even a thing? Did that get voted in?
These are the things
But that's the kind of stuff they were doing.
This is what we're focusing on. We should be doing what Sherry Denham does almost every single day, which is getting people elected. This is what we should be doing. This is what we should be doing.
Sherry does.
And she does a great job. And that's the thing. It's almost that whole biblical thing. You will know them by their fruits. And we know her by her.
So look, to bring the topic in the show to a close.
Shout out to Sherry.
If this doesn't raise the red flags necessary
she's awesome
to let the Hillsborough County Republican Party realize that they need to remove Jim Warshak from his position of leadership along with the rest of the board, in my opinion.
How often does the RPOF send a letter like that to somebody?
I've never seen it in all the times I've been involved.
I've asked the question, and I've heard that a lot of counties, because you live in your little bubble here, and you feel like you're just embarrassed about your own county, and you feel like, gosh, are we the worst?
No, there's dysfunction.
But I have heard that this isn't altogether uncommon.
Right.
That there's some problems in other areas, and so I wonder if the RPOF, maybe this isn't really surprising to the RPOF. Maybe maybe they've been down this road before. Just
I mean,
with
it
some
happens
different
in,
details,
you know,
but
it does. I mean, it's not exclusive. I mean, there are other RECs having problems and that are not too dissimilar. I mean, you know, and again, like there were people who were criticizing even the state chairman, Joe Gruters, because he was holding double positions. He was holding the state position and he was also holding the local county position, you know, as chairman of the Republican Party. And so there were people that took issue with that. You know,
which if you want to do, you can do. There's nothing.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, no organization is perfect, but the problem is that he specifically Warshak, and then you know, and in going deeper down the rabbit hole, you know, those that are supporting him have been a stain on this organization and completely ineffective for the last 6 years.
I think if my they're not watching, probably don't care, maybe they are, but my advice to the board and to people that may find themselves supportive of the board and the actions they've taken in the past would be to understand that we're not going to, that when people criticize you or when people raise concerns, the first reaction shouldn't be, this person's disloyal, this person is a rhino, this person doesn't support the president, or this person, you know, that shouldn't be your gut reaction.
Yep.
Your gut reaction when you're the leader of an organization, especially a volunteer organization, and you have people that are volunteering their time to be there. They're not being paid to be there.
Right.
It's not their job. They're volunteering to be a part of your organization. Mm-hmm. When people raise concerns to you and you're the leader of that organization, you should pause. And you should listen and take it in and say, does this match up with the stated mission of the organization? And if the person's criticism is in line with the mission, then you need to listen to it and address it and potentially change course. If the person's way off base and there's just a personality issue, okay, well, then that needs to be handled with some grace, okay? Yeah. Because they're still a volunteer. They don't have to be there, but they are there. Handle those situations with grace. Stop calling people out as if they're, you know, un-American, because they're not. I mean, they're there. And you know who's not there? Tens of thousands of other people in the community that are also Republicans, but they're not there.
Right.
So the people that are there and are willing to do anything at all need to be respected as individuals. And if you have 100 people in the room, 150 people, you're going to have 150 variations of opinions. And to run a volunteer organization, you got to get people focused in on the one thing that really matters. Hey, you have this view, you have that view. We respect it, all that. But we're here for one reason, and that's to get Republicans elected. And anything that departs from that, whether it's your idea or my idea, should be removed.
Well, and to get more specific, local Republicans elected, because again, this is a group that is currently obsessed with our former president.
We're not here to elect the president of the United States.
Right,
we're not.
Exactly. Or congressman for that matter.
That's right.
You know, but they don't understand that. And again, you know, a lot of their flaws come from the simple fact that they've never worked on a campaign. They've never worked, you know, for someone in elected office. They've never truly been part of the process. You know, they may have volunteered here or there, but they don't truly understand how the sausage is made.
I think, again, what's going to happen tomorrow is because the majority of people that we think are not going to be watching or not on the leadership is watching this is going to watch tomorrow. And we're going to get phone calls. From what has happened in the past, we are getting phone calls tomorrow morning when they wake up in the morning to watch this.
People get so butthurt. I don't understand.
That's what we're going to see. And we have a meeting on Thursday that I want everyone who's still watching to attend if they're in Hillsborough County as Republicans, because we need more people to join that organization. Because every Republican, every precinct should have it, and they're doing a great job with the precinct development at the moment. But when you have a room, and again, this is the core issue, that the majority of people that are attending the HRC at the moment don't live in the metropolitan part of Tampa or Hillsborough County. They live on the outskirts. They live in bubbles that are very red and everything else. I am probably one of 12 Republicans inside my precinct.
Hasn't that always been a problem?
No, we had huge numbers of Republicans inside Hillsborough, inside Tampa that used to attend this meeting.
But remember, we used to get to meet, and we can't go down this route, but we used to meet at the Alfano Center. Like, we used to meet
and it was hundreds of people.
And I know, but it was more central.
It wasn't. The Alfonso Center was in USF. It's easier for someone from South South Tampa to get to Brandon using the Leroy Selman than it was for them to get up there. So that's not the point. The leadership is the makeup of the party.
The location, yes, I've always had an issue with the location, but again, we're kind of getting into the weeds
that's
here.
weeds.
And the problem is that again, the people in power decided to bring the meeting out to Brandon, instead of making it centrally located. I did the research, and travel times, regardless of what part of the county we were from, were exactly the same whether you were going to Brandon or whether you're going downtown. And people refused to downtown because they had all these stereotypes, all these,
It's not the same if you live in Brandon. It's not that. Let's be honest. A big portion of the committee lives in East Hillsborough County, so they want the meeting in East Hillsborough County.
Yeah, but even doing the math again, if you were living in Sun City Center, and to go to Brandon for a meeting, or at the time it was that Net Park, and we're just so down the rabbit hole. It would actually take you just as long to get downtown.
You got to give Sun City Center a pass. I mean,
no, but I'm saying I did it from Carrollwood. I did the math from Carrollwood. I did the math from.
Senior citizens aren't always comfortable driving at night. I mean, you got to give them a pass.
Well, anyways, all right. So,
of the 5 points that were issued onto the letter, I'm going to say that you're going to immediately see issues if we come up on Thursday and there's still 15 people sitting on top of the exec board at the meeting. Then there's a problem. There should be 4 people sitting at that table, which is the chair, the vice chair, the secretary, and the treasurer. Really, that should be it. Even the state committee man and woman technically shouldn't be up there. They're just doing their reports, and that you can be sitting in the audience. You have to show leadership.
Yeah.
Does the letter say that you can't sit at the head table? I mean, watch. People are going to be splitting hairs. Watch.
No,
People
the letter
will split
says.
hairs.
The letter also says you should not
can't
have
be-
legal counsel and you cannot have a parliamentarian on that table because that shows that they're voting. They're the ones that get to vote on these things. So perception is everything.
Right.
If they keep it the same way.
I agree. They need to. They need
So
to
someone going to go into.
No, they need to
main
honor.
meeting?
They need to honor both the letter and the spirit of the letter of the command or whatever directive, whatever you want to call it.
All right, we'll see. We'll have a follow up on that, and look, as much as I wish that they would kind of change their ways and see the error of their ways, they're not. They're
Gold and platinum.
I'm looking for the golden cow.
We're at 85 minutes. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Side, the most important relevant podcast in politics. Jonny Torres, your host. Thank you again to Joe Wicker and Anibal David Cabrera for joining us on the show today. It was certainly a healthy conversation. Again, we have a special conversation with Captain Will Smith, private pilot, to talk to us about what's happening with Southwest Airlines and the federal vaccine mandates coming up. So keep an eye on our social media platforms for that. Don't forget, you can download the audio version of this podcast over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. On behalf of these two crazy guys over here, I'm Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week. Good night, everybody.